Still on Kenya, I had a story of one woman, and that story broke my heart. I'm talking about Joyce Nyawira, who moved to Saudi Arabia in June of this year to start a lucrative job that was promised by her Saudi agent. In fact, he sent her the contract of the job before leaving Kenya, and the contract stated that she would be serving a royal family in Riyadh. That is the capital city of Saudi Arabia. But when she landed in Saudi Arabia, she was taken to a farmer's family in a place called Sakaka, located more than 1,200 kilometers from the capital city. She's never been to Saudi Arabia, so she didn't know where she was being taken. And when they got there, she was forced to wait on a family of 18 people. Every day, she would wash all their dishes as well as their clothes. Every day she would clean 18 rooms, she would clean 7 toilets and bathrooms, she would feed 100 chickens, and when the sun goes down, she has to go and work in the farm, which they call shamba. And on top of that, she would go without food for days because they only fed her whenever they felt like. In fact, there was a time she was locked in the chicken shed that was outside in the harsh desert heat of Saudi Arabia, and the chilly nights, and they locked her there for 3 days without food. So keep in mind, all this happened in June of this year. I said that so you know that this is still going on. Now, to cut a long story short, one day she discovered some blood-stained female clothes inside a trash can, as well as a Safaricom SIM card, which they use in Kenya, and a 50 shilling airtime scratch card. So she put 2 and 2 together and realized, wait a minute, if this is a Kenyan SIM card with 50 shillings still on it, and these are female clothes stained with blood in a trash can, she was like, there must have been another Kenyan woman here before she came, and that woman must have been killed. So she decided to call her agent that this is what she found, and she wants to leave the house immediately, which to me was not that smart, because this same agent was the one that got you in the mess that you're in. Why trust him to get you out of it? Unfortunately for Joyce, that agent decided to call her employers and told them that, hey, the new lady found out what happened to the last lady. So as a punishment, they locked her up in the chicken shed for more than a week. During that time, she fed on whatever was left over by the chickens. However, none of them in that family wanted to touch the chicken manure, which had been piling up since they locked her up, because she was the one doing all the work. So because they needed her to clean up the chicken manure, they released her in order for her to clean it up. And that day, while she was disposing the chicken manure, she discovered the graves of 2 former employees. So she realized, hey, it wasn't just one maid that had been killed before I came. 2 people had been killed before I came. So guess what she did? She piled some junk and some woods on top of a wheelbarrow and climbed over the fence of the compound and then started running for her life. She's never been to Saudi, like I said. She had no clue where she was going, but she said she kept running like a mad woman anywhere but where she was, until she met a good Samaritan, someone who gave her some food and called the police. Now, according to Joyce, 2 policemen came to get her, but on their way to the police station, they took turns to rape her. Yes, policemen, I know. But that's not all. When she got to the police station, they put her in jail, and she was there for almost 2 months. Actually, she met about 50 other Kenyan women in that jail while she was there. But she was very lucky because a female police officer finally pitied her and decided to call her owners and made them buy her return tickets back to Kenya, as well as made them drive her to the airport. And of course, on the way to the airport, that family physically assaulted her. They beat her up, they tore her dress. But you know what? She's just glad to make it back to Kenya alive. Now, this is actually not Joyce. This is one of the people that were crying as Joyce was sharing her story with the press. For now, we are not seeing Joyce's picture because of all that she's been through, because of the stigma. But if only I can explain how I felt when I read her story. I was furious that anybody would treat a human being like that. I don't know why many Saudi Arabians are treating Africans like this and getting away with it. As you know, this is not peculiar to Kenyans. Ethiopians are treated the same way. I've talked about this in the past. In fact, there are several pictures of Ethiopians killed in Saudi Arabia, men and women. But how come this is still happening after they deported thousands of immigrants from Saudi Arabia? How come they are still treating people like this? I found out that Saudi Arabia's sponsorship system known as kafala ties employment visas to employers, indirectly turning voluntary servitude to slavery. They do this to Asians as well. They would arrange a resident permit by recruiting agencies that match the worker to the household, and then they would charge both parties a recruitment fee. So now the workers will become indebted to the agencies. A typical workday for domestic workers in Saudi Arabia is between 15 to 18 hours in a day. Imagine somebody working straight for 18 hours in a day out of 24 hours, and they pay them about $5 to $7 per day. And guess what? Some of these employers would refuse to pay the employees for a long time. In fact, sometimes for years, they may not pay their employees. They would say, we're giving you food, we're giving you a place to sleep, even if it's outside. They would say, what do you need the money for? So many employers have actually killed their employees if they keep asking for their money. There are no off days, no rest hours, there is no vacation, no nothing. As you know, slavery was officially abolished in Saudi Arabia in 1960. At that time though, there were about 300,000 slaves still in Saudi Arabia. Even though it was abolished on paper, hey, the practice continued unofficially. First of all, when will our people in Africa learn that the grass is not necessarily greener on the other side and that not all that glitter is gold? I mean, we've been hearing stories like this for a long time, long time, yet there are people who are still bent on taking their chances. As bad as it was for Joyce, she's actually very lucky. Very lucky, because several women were not able to escape for years. I've read stories of women who escaped after 2 years, after 4 years, and some were actually killed by their owners. Some men are treated the same way. In fact, 2 years ago, a Saudi man was advertising a male slave on Facebook, and he stated that they've castrated the man, rendering him impotent. This is the English version of what he said. So this is the thing. If you're not going to Saudi for tourism or for pilgrimage or to take up a professional job, please be careful. Please and please be careful. Again, I wish that African leaders would just develop our countries so that our people would not continue to suffer in the hands of such people in the name of searching for better life. And lastly, if you know someone or someone who knows someone who's desperate to get out of his or her country without knowing anything about where they're going, and please warn them to be familiar with where they're going. At least be able to speak the language of where you're going. Don't go anywhere because you got a contract from anyone. Really, Saudi Arabia, for how long would you treat Africans like this? And you know, I can't help but remember that hashtag that was started by Ethiopians when so many of them were being deported from Saudi Arabia. They had this hashtag called "Someone Tell Saudi Arabia." Someone tell Saudi Arabia that you cannot continue to treat human beings like this. Someone tell Saudi Arabia that just because the color of our skin is different from yours doesn't mean you're better in any way. Someone tell Saudi Arabia that the world is watching. We know what is going on. Someone tell Saudi Arabia that enough is enough. Someone tell Saudi Arabia that this will not go on for long. Someday, Africa will take its rightful place among the rising continents. Someone tell Saudi Arabia. Guess what? I'm just keeping it real.